This is Easter Sunday, April 19th, and I'm going over to Grandma and Granddad Wallace to tape a school interview.
And the year is 1992.
Well, one thing that I think should be understood before we get into these questions, is that both your grandmother and I were raised in a rather rural setup, and so our lives were a lot slower than they are today, and many of the things that you have, like telephones and cars, we didn't have. So, okay, let's start with the questions.
Well, the first question is, when were you born?
I was born on February 3rd, 1917.
You got it?
And I was born on June 4th, 1915. And I was born in San Anselmo, Marin County.
And I was born in Asequa, Colorado.
I have a brother and a sister, and I was the youngest of the three.
Okay, I had a sister that was older than I, two sisters younger, and one brother younger.
As far as pets are concerned, I never had a pet when I was living in Marin County. When I was younger, the people with whom I lived boarded dogs, and they had one dog in particular that was a real friend of mine and always was with me when I walked around.
Go ahead. Well, wait a second. Didn't my mom? I thought my mom told me that one day the dogs sort of saved you when a boy was making fun of you.
Well, in this particular situation, one day when I was out, 2 or 3 tough kids came around and said something to me, and I said, "You better not raise your hand or this dog will attack." And they said, "Well, we don't believe you," and so they made like they were going to hit me, and the dog leaped at them, and that was the end of that. No more problem with those tough kids.
Well, do you want me to ask questions now, or do you want to keep on? Do you want to read off the?
Well, I want to tell you that I had one dog that I was very specially attached to. And one night, my sister and I went out in the dark, and evidently someone approached us, and we couldn't see him, and our dog took after him. And when the dog came back, it had a hole in its face. Somebody had hit him or shot him or something. And that hole never really healed until the day he died.
The third question. Oh,
About chores?
yeah. Fourth question is chores.
When I was growing up, the main thing that I had to do was polish the shoes on Sunday morning and take care of the yard and keep the weeds out.
And my sister and I always did the dishes, and we made beds and dusted and cleaned when we were little.
Well, as far as discipline was concerned, I don't remember ever being spanked, because my folks could just talk to me in a stern voice and I would understand which way I was supposed to go. And I remember one time when I made a golf club and I was hitting rocks. It was on a Sunday morning, and this one rock went straight down the street, and then it curved and went through one of the big windows. And of course the people were quite upset, but my dad, when he looked at it, he was upset with me, but I don't remember getting spanked for it.
And I don't remember getting spanked either. I was scolded. That was it.
Okay, as far as the comic strips, I guess the Cats and Jammer Kids were kind of a favorite. Other than that, I don't remember too much about the funny papers.
I can remember the Cat and Sammer Kids too. That was the favorite of all the kids.
And were there any other comic strips that stick out?
Yeah, there was Alley Oop and Tilly the Toiler.
Are you through?
What
was your favorite radio program? We didn't have a radio, so didn't have a favorite radio program.
When did you get your first radio? Or when was the first time you ever got a radio, or you had a radio of your own?
Gee, I don't think we ever had a radio, even when I was going through high school, so
I did. We had a radio by the time I was in high school, and I liked the music programs more than anything else.
As far as any effect, radio didn't bother me. I didn't miss them, didn't know what they offered, and had other things to do, so time just passed by.
My favorite program on the radio was the hit parade, where they gave all the top music, and then we could wait and see which one was the most favorite that week.
Oh, like the top 10?
That's right. And every week we would wait for that. And there was some good music.
And it says, what were some of the fads during your teenage years? Well, the pace was a lot slower then than it is today, and we didn't have a lot of fads in the same sense that you have them now, because the radio and newspapers hadn't taken over. But the one that I do remember is that we had, the fellows had corduroy jeans, and we used to keep them without washing them until they would stand up by themselves. But that was about the only fad that I can remember.
And I can't remember any fads as a girl.
And what age did you begin to date? I believe I was about 17.
And I believe I was about 18. We went to parties and things like that, but as a date, it was about 18.
Where with the date thing? Do you remember any real dates which stick out in your mind?
Not really. We went to parties, and then as a group we went to the movies, and we went to like baseball games as a group. But a special date, I can't remember.
So you never went with one person? You always were in groups?
Yeah. That's right.
Well, as far as doing things in groups, other than an occasional party, we didn't have cars to run around in, so we just sort of stayed in the local area, and whatever we did for fun, we did it with our folks, like going over to San Francisco to the zoo or Golden Gate Park or something of that nature.
So with the dates, if you had one person, granted, did you have like maybe a girl come with you, or did you have a group? Was it like grandma, where you had a group come with you?
Did you go as a group, or?
No, just very seldom as a group.
It was just
very seldom as a group.
Just one person?
One person.
And you had a group, grandma?
Yeah, just friends.
But some of the other things that we did, the fellows would get together and play the local sports on the sandlot, football, baseball, whatever was in season. And we didn't have a good baseball. Lots of times it was all taped up with plumber's tape. We just had to make do with what we had. But we had fun doing that.
Do any games stick out in your mind, or is it just the same thing? Are there any top hitters or whatever? Do you remember that? Or was everyone average?
Oh, you mean in any one sport?
Yeah, did Granddad, were you a top hitter, or do you know anyone who was a top hitter back then?
Well, can I answer that one?
Yeah.
I went down to Tiburon. We had a baseball team there that we went every weekend. We'd watch them play, and they were very good. And some of them became professional. So I enjoyed that. So I have loved sports since I was very little.
What's your favorite sport?
Well, as far as I was concerned, it was whatever was in season. In high school, I was on the track team. Used to run the 100-yard dash and shot put, high jump, relay, and then in basketball season, I was on the varsity basketball team. And as far as football is concerned, my dad wouldn't let me go out for football.
Why do you want you to go out for football?
I'm not hearing him too well.
Well, why didn't he want you to go out for football?
Because I went to school on the train, and we were batching. We didn't have any woman in the house, and so I had to get home and get dinner ready. So when he got home at 5 o'clock from work, dinner would be ready.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
I played all the sports in high school, from baseball, basketball, volleyball, hockey, and archery.
So it's you did everything which was available to you?
Yeah.
Just almost like Granddad?
Yeah. Yeah, but so these were different things than just dating and stuff. We had interests that were physical and going. And I hiked a lot. Went up Mount Tamalpais and hiked around. I like that.
And do you want me to read the ninth
Was
question?
Did you enjoy music? I enjoyed music, and at that time, through the 30s, sweet swing was the main kind of music. We didn't have any of the pop music that they have today, and they used to have a list of songs that came out every week. And what they call them, Mom?
That was the hit parade.
The hit parade. And so we all listened to the hit parade to see what were the popular tunes of the day.
And I enjoyed cowboys songs and western songs and Hawaiian songs like Sweet Lilani. That was my favorite.
Well, then some of the sentimental songs were songs like Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, and what were some of the others?
Oh, gosh.
Anyway,
There were lots of them.
and then as far as dance steps, most of us did the foxtrot, and then some waltz, but mostly foxtrot.
The same things?
Then when did you get your driver's license? I believe I was about 16 when I got my driver's license, and my dad's partner taught me to drive. And as far as any particular incident when I was learning to drive, I don't remember anything. It was very smooth, nothing happened. Wasn't too many cars on the road in those days.
When I was 23, and my husband taught me. My dad only had one car, that's the only one in the family, and he didn't teach anybody to drive. He drove, and that was it. So I didn't learn until I was married.
Weren't you pregnant at the time?
I was pregnant. And one time we had the stick shift, and I was going up the hill, and to start, was pregnant, I could just reach the pedal. And as we went, I shifted and we're going up the hill, the car was jerking, getting going, because my foot was bouncing on the pedal. And a policeman stopped me to see if I was all right. And I almost had a baby.
What? Who was it? Who were you carrying that at the time?
Aunt Joni.
Oh, so, did she ever bother you when you were driving and the bumps kept on going?
No. I stopped then when the policeman stopped me, and then that did it. I was all right. I think he took a look at me and he didn't question me.
Then it said, who was your favorite hero or role model when you were growing up? Well, as far as I was concerned, I don't remember any particular individual. Remember, we didn't have television and didn't have a radio, and we got the local paper, but there was no one that was really made over or built up in the eyes of other people, and so it never dawned on me to have a hero or a role model.
And same with me.
Okay. What about your parents? Were they a good role model to you?
Definitely.
You mean your parents?
Or a parent?
Well, of course, I never thought of my father as being a hero. Maybe you could call him a role model, because I felt that he was living a good life, and although maybe I didn't think of it at the time, maybe I did pattern my way of life after my father.
Okay.
As far as hobbies or activities, involved with my schoolwork, in my sports, I also like to work with the tools in the basement, building little boats and sailing them in the creek, and spend a lot of time doing that.
And my hobbies were all the sports that I could find. I enjoyed that.
And then, how old were you when you first began to shave? Gee, at first it was just a hair here and a hair there, and I don't know whether I just plucked them out, but I imagine it must have been around 17. How about you, Mom? Did you shave?
No, and I don't remember my mother telling me I could not wear makeup, but I do not think I started until I was about 17 or 18, because girls just didn't do it a lot, and I just used lipstick when I started.
Okay, so what is the most fond memory of your childhood? Gee, as far as I was concerned, life was just a bowl of cherries, and it was just a smooth transition from one year to the next, and they were all very good memories. I don't remember anything that was that special.
Well, I can remember riding on trains. That was my best. When we went to Texas and then another trip to Colorado with my family, we enjoyed looking out the window at all the scenes. And one time we ran into a dust storm in Arizona, and the conductor had to come and shut the windows because it was coming in on us. But we really enjoyed that.
And they said, what, if anything, would you like to do differently during your teenage years? Well, the main thing that I could think of, and I had no way of changing it, was it would have been really something if my mother had been alive. Instead of living with my dad and then for a while with my aunt, if my mother had been there to kind of guide me and help me over some of the rough spots, it would have made my teenage years maybe even smoother than they were.
I can't think of anything special that I would have wanted differently. My mother and dad made life very, very good for us.
And how old were you when you married? I was 24 years old, and I met my wife in college, and I went with her for about 2 years, 3 years before we got married.
Yeah, I was 22 when we met, and of course we went 3 years, and then we got married in Reno, Nevada.
And how old were you when you were married?
22.
Oh, I thought you said when you met.
No, I was 22 when we got married.
Well, I do recall that when we met in the library, Mother was working in the library, and then I was also hired to write the number on the back of the books, and so we got introduced to each other at that time. But I guess the interesting thing was that when we first went to class in the fall, when Mother came down the stairs, and I saw her, and we were all standing around waiting for the instructor to get there, and when I saw her, I said, well, at least I'm not going to hold up the bottom of the class. And that was a real challenge to Mother.
It shocked me.
So
I didn't even know him. I was just getting to know him.
So actually, you started off your relationship with an insult.
No, he was teasing me. And I didn't know it because I didn't know him.
And it's how long that you are.
Well, what was it like when you went out to live away from your parents? It didn't bother me a bit. I guess the way we had lived at home and we were batching, that when the time came to leave, it was just one of those things, and I was looking forward to what I was going to do. It happened that I was going to be going to sea, and it was kind of exciting, so it didn't bother me about leaving home.
Well, when I left home, I went to Santa Cruz to get work, to earn money to finish my college. And I did get a little homesick, but everything was so different. And I was working with a girlfriend, and it was very interesting. And then I eventually, after having 2 or 3 jobs, I bought into a small restaurant and worked it for 2 years before we got married.
Well, it says, what profession or kind of work are or were you in? Well, starting out, I went to sea for a couple of years, and then decided that wasn't what I wanted to do, so then the next step was to go to college and get an education. And then when I came out of that, I was working with the National Youth Administration up in Calaveras County, and I had about 14 dropouts that I worked with, and these young fellows needed guidance, so I worked with them during the day, and then I was in charge of them at night. And that went on for a year, and then finally they transferred me down to San Luis Obispo to put up a residence there. And while I was there, I got to know the people who were at Cal Poly, and that they were dedicated to helping young people move along, so I was quite impressed with them. So eventually I decided to go back to school for a semester and come out as an ag teacher.
And
What'd you do?
But as soon as he graduated from college, we got married, and then I was a homemaker, and I ended up with 4 children. That kept me busy.
Well, it says, can you remember what your thoughts were when these inventions were first used by your family or community? Cars, family never had one.
Well, we had a car when I was young, and I can remember one special trip. We went on trips with the family. Of course, they weren't really fancy cars at that time, but we had a Chevrolet with the isinglass windows. They weren't glass windows, but we took a trip to Oregon one time, and we camped, and we had a wonderful trip at that time. That was my main memory.
Well, going through high school, I used to work for different people, taking care of their yards, and this one elderly couple, they had a car which they didn't drive very much, so I used to chauffeur them around, and I always enjoyed driving, and I'm sure I figured someday I would have a car of my own, but it wasn't an obsession with me. And when I started college and had to walk 5 or 6 miles to school, I thought about getting a car, but I couldn't afford it. It was a question of going to school and saving the money for school, and if I got a car and then had to maintain it, I just couldn't afford it. So as far as planes were concerned, never gave too much thought about that at the time. Radio, same thing there. Eventually, when I went to college, we had a radio. Never had television. When I first saw something on television, I was watching some boxers, and I was already teaching at the time, and I thought, it would be nice to have a television set because it was interesting to see these people on the screen. It was just like a miniature movie. But here again, the economics of life at that time was such where you just didn't go out and buy whatever you wanted. You had to wait until you were able to earn it.
Then same thing with you.
Same thing.
And then the World War One.
No, we were too young. We couldn't remember that.
And what about the Depression?
Well, we were living in Marin County, both of us, in California, and life went on normally, just slower pace, and we adjusted to it, and we all, at least the two of us, we handled everything. There's no problem. We never objected to anything. It just, that was it.
So it's like that's the way it was, and you either accepted it or why are you here, right?
Yeah, we got along fine.
Well, do you have any memories of World War One? Wasn't born at the time, so didn't have any thoughts of it at all. I guess after it started, I was, and before it finished, I was a couple years old, but had no thoughts about it. Didn't change my life as far as I know.
What about the Depression, Granddad?
The what?
The Depression?
The Depression? Well, here again, unlike today, we didn't have the radio blasting at you all the time about how bad things were, and we didn't have television. We had the newspaper, and we knew that President Roosevelt had gotten the WPA started, but as far as anyone around the community being out of work, if they were, we didn't know about it. So it just didn't affect our lives. We just kept going in the same frugal way that we'd been existing. In other words, we didn't have that much money when every once in a while on Saturday night, Dad would take us to the show, and at that time it only cost about 15 cents to get in, and then after the show, maybe he'd give us a nickel for a candy bar, but this wasn't an everyday occurrence, and we weren't demanding because we knew that the money was hard to get and wasn't there. In those days, carpenters made $8 a day, and what do they make now? Some astronomical amount per hour. So it was just a different way of life, and I guess it's so difficult for young people today to understand that the money wasn't there, and we didn't expect it.
And I guess the feelings about money have changed because there aren't many people. There are lots of people who think that they deserve $20 an hour.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that's true.
Many of us earn 25 cents an hour.
All through high school, I worked in gardens, and I got 25 cents an hour for working. But even when I went to sea, I was getting, as an ordinary seaman, I was getting $30 a month.
That's
And of course, I got board and room on. Besides, when you're out at sea, they have to give you some place to sleep, you know. But $30 a month, that's $1 a day. And then later on, when I was quartermaster, I was getting $70 a month. But see, there just wasn't a lot of money to throw away. But of course, you have to remember that $1 went a lot farther then than it does today, because a loaf of bread only cost 10 cents, and a quart of milk only cost about a dime, and everything else was in proportion. So you could go do a lot of things with very little money.
Well, a candy bar or an ice cream cone all cost a nickel. That was it. And so you can see it would go a lot farther. But there weren't that many dollars around either to buy them.
And then it said, when did you know times were getting better? Well, things were so gradual that it never really hit you that things were getting better. But as I remember it, it was about the time World War II started in the late 30s. So as far as World War II, when it started in 39 and Hitler invaded Poland, you know, that was something that you were expecting because you had been reading in the paper about Chamberlain from England visiting Hitler and supposedly had some kind of an agreement with him. And then after Chamberlain went home, Hitler then just went ahead and invaded Poland. So, you know, it was a little bit of a shock to think that someone and some country would have the audacity to just try to take over another country, but that's the way it was. But as far as affecting our lives, it really didn't in this country.
Was Chamberlain like the president or whatever of Poland?
Chamberlain, I'm not sure what he was, foreign minister of Britain or something of that nature.
He was in Britain.
Okay, what about you, Grandma?
Which one are you?
Well, didn't you answer the time about when times were getting better and the Depression?
No, it just came so gradually and you couldn't tell.
And World War II?
Well, some of our friends joined the services before we actually got into it. Then we heard about them being killed over in Europe. They were pilots. They got killed before, and that was very sad for us that they had done that.
Then it said, how did you feel when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor? Well, I just couldn't understand how the Japanese could do that and get away with it. It just seemed to me that we were forewarned enough about what was going to happen that they should have been ready for it. Because I remember when I was going to sea, they were tearing up some tracks in San Francisco, and they were going to ship those tracks over to Japan as scrap metal, and the longshoremen in San Francisco were refusing to load them because they said at that time that we'll ship those iron rails over to Japan and it'll come back in the form of bullets. And so I'm thinking when the Japs attacked Pearl Harbor that the longshoremen knew what could happen, and if they could know, then certainly the State Department should have known. And the fact that the military had all our airplanes lined up in the airfield So, and with machine guns out on a Sunday morning, I just couldn't understand how this could possibly have happened. And I was very upset with our own military.
And were you ever affected by rationing or rationing?
Yes, yes. We had to learn to plan our menus, and we would just buy so many things of a certain item. That's all you could buy. You just got stamps. Then you could go buy like butter or meat, things like that. Then you would plan ahead. That's good planning.
I guess as far as rationing was concerned, the thing that affected us most was rationing gasoline. So you couldn't go traveling around as much as you'd like. And so anytime we went from Orland down to the Bay Area to see our folks, we'd usually team up with some other couple. And so we would pool our gasoline, and we were able to make a trip once in a while. But that was about the only thing that really hit us.
Yeah, well, it was the butter and shortening and all that. Remember, we had food stamps.
Yeah, we had coupons.
Grandma, I didn't think you answered the question about the Japanese attacking, did you?
The Japanese attacking.
Pearl Harbor?
Well, we were outside in the yard of our new house that we had built, and we were taking pictures of our first daughter, Joan, and our neighbor came from across the street and said, "Have you had the radio on?" And they had heard that the Japs were attacking Pearl Harbor. That was the first we knew, and it was very much of a surprise. So,
Well, the one thing that bothers me today is this business about sending the Japanese into concentration camps. And a lot of people feel that that was the wrong thing to do, but these people who are talking like that didn't seem to understand, or don't understand, what the feeling was at the time when the Japanese did what they did. And in this country, the Japanese children were still going to Japanese schools after they finished with the American schools, and so you didn't know where their loyalty was. And so people were upset with them, and a lot of those people could have been harmed, so they finally decided that for the safety of everybody, the Japanese and the Americans, they better just isolate them, which they did. And today they make an awful fuss over it, but as far as I was concerned, it was a very necessary step that they took. Now, I remember when I was at Davis, when they decided to send the Japanese into these internment camps, the student body president was a Japanese, and they were very good people. But here again, for their own protection, they had to be sent to an internment camp.
Americans were afraid of them.
Also, if an American saw one walking down the street, they might be so afraid they might just pull out a gun and shoot him.
Yeah, you just never know what's going to happen. So.
But when we were living in Elk Grove, the Japanese there owned these strawberry gardens, and we went out and picked strawberries there, and they were very good people. So we weren't afraid of them at all.
But some might be.
Some might be.
Okay, how did you feel about the atomic bomb? Well, at the time, the war was dragging on with Japan, and one way to end it quickly was to drop that atomic bomb. And so that's what they did. Otherwise, we would have lost a lot of men if we tried to invade Japan. But as far as the atomic bomb, let's hope no one decides to drop another one.
Well, do you think it was right to drop it, or did?
Well, I feel at the time that it was a question of how many lives could they save by dropping it, and we would have had a terrible loss of life if we had to invade Japan.
What about in Japan now? What do you think we should have helped? Do you think we should have rebuilt Japan? The losses of Japan that now, or do you think they should have rebuilt their?
Well, we did rebuild their industry, and the other thing that I thought maybe they could have done was to say, all right, if you don't surrender, we're going to drop this bomb, and it's going to be very destructive. And if you don't believe it, we're going to drop the bomb, we'll say, on some small island where there's no one living there. And you can see what's going to happen to that island. And so, with the Japanese having been notified, drop the bomb on this island and it would obliterate it. And they could see what would happen if they dropped that bomb on one of their cities. And maybe if they had demonstrated the destructive power of the atomic bomb, maybe we could have kept from dropping it on Hiroshima or any other place.
And saved a lot of money by not having to build up their industry?
Well, that probably would have been part of it, but here again, after the war, World War II, we went in and we built up Germany, and the crazy part about it, here we built up their industry so that it was more modern than our own, and then they became competitors. And that kind of hurt us for a while, in the same way with the Japanese.
How do you feel about Japan and Germany now?
Oh, I have no qualms about the Japanese or the Germans. It's just part of living together. It's all over.
Same with you, Grandma?
That's right. They're all part of the world.
And do you feel the same way about the atomic bomb with Granddad?
Yes. It was necessary.
And number 23, what medical or scientific advances do you feel have most affected your life?
I don't believe there are any that have affected my life.
Well, you know, I know there have been some terrific advances in medicine, and they have saved a lot of people's lives with heart operations and cancer and all the other things, but nothing like that has affected our lives. So as far as these advancements are concerned, we haven't had anything to do with them.
And 24, how do you feel about how have women's rights changed in your lifetime?
Well, the unfortunate thing in this country is that too much of the politics is governed by pressure groups, and the women's rights movement has become one of them. And there's no question about it that the women have rights just like men do, but they can't carry them too far. And so there's a tendency for them to want everything right now. Now, as far as equal pay for equal work, there's no question in my mind that it should be. And that's one reason why when our daughters were growing up, we suggested that they go into teaching, because of all the professions, that's one place where they get the same pay as men for teaching a class. And so it just seemed like it was the right way to go. And one of these days it'll be the same way in all other phases of industry.
And I don't approve of women just speaking out and trying to bully their way because they're a woman. A woman has her place, but I don't think they have to get out and yell like they do.
What has it changed in your lifetime? Has women's rights changed very much?
Well, the women like to think they have.
Well, can we go on to question number 25? Are there special people who have influenced your life in any way?
Yes, my family, my mother, my father, and my husband, and my children, and my grandchildren, they have affected my life.
And how?
For the good. They've made life very special for me.
And you, Granddad?
Well, as far as special people, I just assume that there have been a lot of them, but I can't actually pick out one in particular, other than grandmother. But I guess as far as grandmother's concerned, she just keeps me going straight.
And number 26, what was the hardest thing you ever had to do?
I can't think of a single thing.
I never gave it a thought as to the hardest thing. There were just a lot of difficult things as we went along, but you just take those things in your stride and you do them and you don't give it any special thought. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think of anything that was the hardest thing I had to do.
Okay, on to number 27, what is one thing you would do differently if you had the chance to do so?
I can't think of anything. If you made some change, you would have to think about the repercussions, and so maybe it's best just to leave it like it was, huh?
Yeah.
Everything. I can't think of a thing either.
Number 28, what scares you most about life?
As far as I'm concerned, nothing scares me about life. I just enjoy living. I just enjoy my family, and I just hope things just keep going along the way they are.
Same thing. 29, how do you feel about education today as compared to when you were in school?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's worse, and the reason for it, in my mind, is that today the students, on the whole, lack discipline of mind, discipline of body. They don't have any objective as far as their education is concerned. And because of their attitude, they just don't apply themselves. And then
Okay, Mike.
Granddad's gonna finish his comment on education. You
I already talked on it.
you haven't completed it.
Oh. Well, as far as education is concerned, it is worse today than it was when I was in school, simply because the students in my day went to learn. Today, they just want to get through as easily as they can. They're not motivated. And in many cases, the teachers aren't as well prepared as they should be.
Well, I feel that the teachers used to have control of the classroom. What they said went. And if the children did anything that was wrong, the parents disciplined them when they came home also. So they stayed there and they learned and they wanted to do what was right.
Okay, you finished?
No, I feel that nowadays I don't think they go into geography and history as much as I feel they should.
Okay, question 30. How are you different from your parents and children?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think I'm too much different than my father. I have somewhat the same goals that he had, and that's to make a reasonable living for my family and to live within the law. And as far as my children are concerned, I don't think they differ too much from me.
I feel the same. I follow my parents' living, and I think my children are going right along with our thinking too.
Question 31. Who has the had the better life? You, your parents, or your children? And why?
Well, I feel that we had better life than our parents did, because they had a very hard life. They didn't have any of the good things that we had. They didn't have any appliances, or they didn't have cars or anything to get around. And I've appreciated my washing machine and my dryer and that my mother did not have.
Well, there's no question as far as we are living today that we've had a better life than our parents, but when you stop and think about our parents, they weren't used to a lot of the things that we have today, so they didn't miss them. And so I would imagine in their estimation, they had a good life. Now, as far as our children are concerned, I feel that in the first few years of our marriage that we had a much rougher time, because we were moving from one place to another in order to make a good living, and our children have been able to settle down in one or two places and move right along in the area of their choice. But as far as whether we appreciate it more than our children, I think it's about the same. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I know they enjoy what they're doing. So I don't see there's much difference there.
Okay, 32. What would you say is the best or happiest time of your life?
Well, I feel the best and happiest time in my life is from the time I was married until present. That's been the best part of my life.
Oh, I feel the same way. Before you're married, you're sort of going from pillar to post, and you're not really focusing on any one thing. You're just trying to find yourself. But once you get married and settle down, then you have direction and you have something for which to work, and life moves along a lot smoother. So without question, it's been since I got married.
Oh, no, 33. Have you taken any trips that are special to you? Where did you go, and what made the trip special?
I think the trip that we took that was most special to me was when our children were growing up, and we took all of them across the country, across the United States, saw all the historical spots along the way, and we were able to enjoy them as a family. It was a learning and very rewarding experience.
Well, I feel that was probably the most special trip as far as we're concerned. When we were on the farm and we put in long hours, we always said to the children that someday when we sold the cows, we would take a trip across the country. And fortunately, it worked out where the kids were all in the right stages of their schooling so that they could go and without anyone having to leave home at that time. So we all got in the car and made the trip across to Washington, came back by way of Canada. Another good trip was when I got to thinking that I had had the experience of going around the world and Australia and New Zealand, and that Mother hadn't had that pleasure, so we took a trip to Europe and saw all the sights over there and had castles coming out our ears, and at least it was an experience that we'll all remember. And we took Bill along with us because he was still the only one at home, and that made it very enjoyable too.
Question 34. What are 4 hobbies and or activities that you enjoy now?
See, as far as I'm concerned, I don't have any hobbies as such. I like to manage and work in the orchard, and I spend most of my time thinking about how we can improve things and what we're going to do next, and that takes up most of my time.
Well, I'm kept busy around here with around the orchard and my home and my husband. And so the only sports I really have, the only recreation I have now, I listen to sports. I can't play them anymore, but I listen to all of them. And that's my hobby, to listen to all of the sports.
So with your hobbies are working with the orchard and the house, and with your husband, and listening to sports.
That's right. I used to play all those sports, but now I listen to them all and enjoy it.
And question 35, are there any books you've read that have influenced your life, or that you recommend as outstanding?
I don't believe any of the books. I've read lots of books, but I don't know of any that have influenced my life. I read lots of Zane Grey as a youngster, and I loved the countryside and the picturesque wording of the Zane Grey books. I love that. And so I can enjoy scenery because of that. So I would recommend them to anyone that wants just to relax and enjoy a book.
All of the Zane Grey books?
All of them.
Well, I too have read most of Zane Grey's, and I guess the thing that I liked about him was that it was a Western story, and it was a story of the early West in the United States, and everyone seemed to play it straight. There was always the bad guy and the good guy, and the good guy always came out on top, and so that sort of fit in with my thinking. But there was one other book that I enjoyed, and that was called Les Miserables. It was a French novel, and I guess the thing that impressed me was this convict was supposed to have done something, and he was arrested for it, and then he broke out, and eventually he became mayor of a town, and he did a lot of good things, but this unrelenting French police detective was after him, and it just made quite an impression on me, and how the French policeman finally tracked him down. But I can't say that any one book made a real deep impression on me. I did like that story.
And finally, the last question, 36. What is a message that you would give the young people of today?
Message. I would say enjoy life every day. Enjoy going out and seeing the world, and enjoy the birds and the flowers, and just recognize what is around you. And people are good. You just have to know that.
Well, as far as young people are concerned, I feel that sooner or later they have to set their sights on something, and then they have to be willing to work for it, and things may get rough, but they have to persevere and not give up. And if they have the talent, they're going to achieve what they want. And the only way you can find out is to try.
And that's it. And thanks. I'll turn this off.